Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today, we're diving into a topic suggested by you, our listeners, and it's a big one. The Kumbh Mela.
Oh yeah, it's a fascinating one for sure.
We've got this article from the Indian Express, published January 16th of this year, titled Kumbh Mela Explained. Its mythology, history, astrology, and why millions flock to it.
Sounds like they covered all the bases.
Yeah, they really did. So let's start with the mythology.
Okay.
The article jumps right into this really captivating story about the gods and demons churning the ocean for Amrita.
Right, the nectar of immortality.
Exactly.
The classic story, cosmic tug of war for power,
Yeah.
But for the Kumbh Mela, the important part is what happens when the god Indra's son, Jayant, grabs the Amrita to keep it away from the demons. He ends up running for 12 days, which for us humans is like 12 years, and spills drops at 4 specific locations.
And those locations are
Whoa, I bet you can guess.
the 4 spots where the Kumbh Mela is held.
You got it. Haridwar, Prayagraj, Ujjain, and Nashik Trimbakeshwar.
Makes sense.
And it's not just that the Amrita landed there, it's the belief that bathing in these rivers at the right time with the right cosmic alignment can wash away sins, and you can gain some serious spiritual merit, what they call punya.
It's like a cosmic reset button.
Exactly. A chance to purify yourself, tap into that potent energy from the myth.
I love it. So the location and the timing are both tied into this ancient story. And speaking of timing, the article mentions different types of Kumbh Mela events.
Right. You have your Mahakumbh, the biggest one, which happens every 12 years, rotating between the 4 locations.
Okay.
But then you also have your Kumbh, which literally means half kumbh, which takes place every 6 years at Prayagraj and Haridwar.
So it's like a bigger celebration versus a slightly smaller one, but both are still significant events.
Exactly. It's like emphasizing that cyclical nature of time and renewal, a key concept in Hinduism.
Makes sense.
And it actually ties in beautifully with the whole astrological significance of the Kumbh Mela.
Okay, tell me more about that, because it's not just about the 12-year cycle from the myth, right?
No, not at all. The Kumbh Mela is timed based on these specific planetary positions, particularly Jupiter's 12-year orbit around the sun. Astrologers carefully determine the exact dates when the conditions are most auspicious for each location.
So each location has its own unique astrological trigger, we can call it, that determines when the Kumbh Mela will be held there.
Precisely.
Wow.
It's such a fascinating blend of ancient wisdom and celestial observation, but the article then goes into a bit of a debate about the actual historical origins of the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah, this is where it gets a bit tricky, because the article mentions some pretty conflicting viewpoints about how far back the Kumbh Mela actually goes.
Right. You have some who believe it's incredibly ancient, citing the Skanda Purana, this Hindu scripture.
Okay.
And then you have others who point to the accounts of Xuanzang, a Chinese pilgrim who visited India back in the 7th century.
Oh, wow.
He described this large fair that could have been an early form of the Kumbh Mela. But then you have folks like Professor Girija Shankar Shastri, who challenges those claims.
Right.
Saying,
Yeah.
hold on, there's no definite proof in the existing scriptures.
So where does that leave us?
Well, it highlights the difficulty of pinning down historical origins, especially for traditions that were initially passed down orally.
Oh, right, of course.
We have these pieces of the puzzle, but a complete picture.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
And to make things even more complicated, the article mentions a book called Mahakumbh that claims the Rig Veda, one of the oldest Hindu scriptures, actually does contain verses about the Kumbh Mela's benefits.
It seems like everyone has their own interpretation.
Yeah.
And then there's the theory about Adi Shankaracharya.
Who's that?
He's this philosopher from the 8th century.
Okay.
And the theory is that he might have formalized the Kumbh Mela, shaping it into this gathering, not just for pilgrims, but for ascetics and scholars to exchange knowledge and ideas.
So maybe he saw its potential to become something even bigger than just a ritual bathing festival.
Possibly, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we start to see the Kumbh Mela as more than just a personal spiritual experience, but something with much wider social and cultural implications.
And the article doesn't stop there. It brings up some alternative theories about the origins, including the idea that it might be a rebranded version of an older bathing festival, the Mahakumbh Mela.
Right. Kamma McLean, an Australian professor, suggests this rebranding might have happened after the 1857 rebellion against the British as a way to preserve the tradition under a new gaze.
Oh, wow.
It makes you think about how Even these ancient traditions can adapt and evolve in response to historical events and power dynamics.
It's like the Kumbh Mela had to reinvent itself to survive.
Exactly. But then you have Professor D.P. Dubé, who argues that the fair at Hardwar was likely the original Kumbh Mela because of the astrological conditions during that event. He also connects its development to the Bhakti movement, this period of religious reform led by Hindu saints.
So you've got the astrological significance, the historical context, and these religious movements all kind of shaping the evolution of the Kumbh Mela over centuries.
Exactly. It's like a river itself,
Yeah.
constantly flowing and changing course, yet still ultimately connected to its source.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've covered the myths, the astrological timing, and these historical debates surrounding the Kumbh Mela's origins. But what I'm really curious about is what actually happens at this massive gathering. What do people do there?
Well, the heart of the Kumbh Mela experience is the ritual bathing, right?
Yeah.
Millions of pilgrims immerse themselves in these sacred rivers, believing it washes away their sins and brings them closer to the divine. It's a powerful act of faith and purification.
The article mentions these Kalpwasi, people who dedicate themselves entirely to spiritual pursuits during the Kumbh Mela, like they live on the riverbanks, completely focused on prayer and introspection.
Oh yeah, it's an intense spiritual practice, a chance to break free from material concerns, delve deeper into their faith. It's a testament to that human desire to connect with something larger than themselves.
It sounds like an incredibly transformative experience. The article also talks about Dharan, the act of giving donations.
Yes. Giving generously to sadhus, charities, those in need, is considered a highly meritorious act in Hinduism. During the Kumbh Mela, people believe that Da will bring them spiritual blessings and good karma. It's a beautiful expression of compassion and generosity within this vast gathering.
It's like a spiritual ecosystem where faith and generosity fuel the entire experience. Now let's talk about the sadhu akhadas. These are camps set up by different groups of holy men during the Kumbh Mela. What role do they play in this whole event?
Oh, the sadhu akhadas add such a fascinating dimension to the Kumbh Mela. They are these vibrant, colorful communities within the larger festival, each with their own traditions, rituals, and hierarchy. And of course, they are known for their elaborate processions, the Shahi Snan, where they march towards the rivers for their ritual bathing.
It sounds like a spectacle unlike anything else. But the article also mentioned that there have been historical conflicts between these different akhadas, like each one's vying for prominence and the right to bathe first.
Yes, sadly, competition for power and influence has sometimes led to clashes between these groups. But thankfully nowadays, there's a predetermined order for the Shahi Snan to prevent conflicts and ensure that everyone can participate safely.
So it's like they found a way to maintain peace and order within this incredibly dynamic and diverse gathering. But I'm still curious, what's it actually like to be there amidst this sea of humanity?
Oh, can you imagine? Millions of people from all walks of life driven by this shared faith and desire for spiritual renewal. There's a sense of energy, excitement, and devotion that's almost palpable.
It sounds overwhelming and awe-inspiring at the same time.
It is. It really is. And it's not just about the rituals and ceremonies. It's about the human connections that are forged, the stories that are shared, and the sense of community that emerges. The Kumbh Mela is truly a microcosm of human society, with all its complexities and contradictions.
It's just amazing to think about the sheer scale of this event.
It's massive.
But with so many people gathered in one place,
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder about the impact, especially on the environment.
It's a valid question. And, the article doesn't go into too much detail about that, but it's not hard to imagine the challenges, right?
Right.
Hosting millions of people along a river.
Yeah.
Things like water pollution, waste disposal, the strain on local resources. It must be significant.
It feels like a real balancing act trying to uphold this ancient tradition while also being mindful of the consequences.
Absolutely. It is, but there's growing awareness about these issues.
Okay.
And in recent years, there have been a lot of efforts to make the Kumbh Mela more eco-friendly.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, they've been promoting things like reducing plastic usage, encouraging waste segregation and recycling, even using more sustainable materials for construction.
It all helps. Are there any initiatives around renewable energy? It just seems like such an ideal opportunity to explore things like solar power.
There have been some pilot projects exploring solar power, but it's a work in progress.
Sure.
Implementing these solutions on such a massive scale takes time and coordination, But there's definitely that growing recognition that protecting the environment is essential for preserving the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah, for future generations. It's like a call to action for everyone involved, the pilgrims, the organizers, even the authorities, to find those solutions that honor both the tradition and the planet.
I agree.
But even beyond the environmental impact, I imagine just managing an event this massive presents a whole other set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. The logistics of hosting millions of people in a temporary setting are mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Crowd control, sanitation, preventing disease outbreaks, ensuring enough food and water. It's a monumental task.
It's like creating a pop-up city, one that appears and disappears within a matter of weeks.
That's a great way to put it.
I remember reading that they even use technology like satellite imagery and drones to monitor crowd density and movement.
Oh, yeah. It's a great example of how technology is being integrated into this ancient tradition,
Right.
allowing for better planning, resource allocation, emergency response, all crucial for keeping people safe.
It's fascinating how the Kumbh Mela is adapting to the modern world in those ways.
It is.
Now, shifting gears a bit, the article touches on some potential tensions within the Kumbh Mela itself, particularly regarding the sadhus and akatas.
Yeah.
I'm curious to kind of dig deeper into that
Sure.
because the sadhus are such a prominent part of this event,
They are.
but their presence can also be a little bit controversial, right?
Right. They add to the mystical, spiritual atmosphere, but they also bring up questions about hierarchy, power dynamics, even the potential for exploitation.
Well, the article mentioned those historical conflicts between akatas vying for prominence. Even with the predetermined bathing order now, I still wonder if there are power struggles happening, behind the scenes.
It's hard to say for sure, but these groups are such complex social structures.
Right.
Some level of competition, some rivalry is probably inevitable, even today.
It's human nature.
Yeah, even within a spiritual context.
Right. It's a reminder that the Kumbh Mela, while rooted in this faith and spirituality, it's still very much a reflection of human society with all its, intricacies and challenges.
I agree.
The article also hints at the influence some sadhus wield, not just within the Kumbh Mela, but in wider society.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Because some of them have amassed these huge followings, and they're seen as spiritual leaders. And this can translate into significant political and social influence, which can be used for good or for ill.
It's true.
It's a very complex dynamic.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think about the potential for scams or exploitation targeting pilgrims.
Oh, yeah, especially with so many people and that atmosphere of faith and devotion.
Right, exactly.
Sadly, that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Just like any large-scale event, the Kumbh Mela can attract individuals who might try to take advantage of others.
It's a reminder that even in a sacred space, discernment and caution are important.
For sure.
It's a very delicate balance, maintaining that spirit of faith and openness while also being aware of the potential for manipulation.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about a more positive aspect.
Okay.
The economic impact of the Kumbh Mela.
Yes.
The article mentioned its historical role as a marketplace, and I imagine even today it must generate a significant amount of economic activity.
Absolutely. The Kumbh Mela is an economic engine, especially for those local communities.
Yeah.
It creates jobs, it boosts tourism, it stimulates trade across a whole spectrum of industries.
Like what?
Oh, I think transportation, accommodation, you've got your food vendors, your artisans selling religious items. The list goes on and on.
It's like a temporary boomtown fueled by faith and this influx of millions of pilgrims.
Exactly. And while it's hard to put an exact figure on it, the economic impact is undoubtedly in the billions of dollars, benefiting not just the immediate region, but the wider economy as well.
It's another example of how the Kumbh Mela extends far beyond its religious significance. It's a social and cultural phenomenon with these tangible ripple effects throughout society.
It is.
But as we've been discussing, it's also a festival rife with contradictions, right? We've talked about the environmental concerns, the logistical nightmares, even the potential for conflict and exploitation. Yet there's still this undeniable sense of awe and wonder that surrounds the Kumbh Mela.
You've hit on a key point there, despite all the challenges and controversies. The Kumbh Mela taps into something very deep within the human spirit.
Like what?
The sheer scale of it, the devotion of the pilgrims, it evokes a sense of wonder and connection to something larger than ourselves.
It's like this collective yearning for meaning, a search for something that transcends the everyday.
Exactly, and it reminds us that despite our differences, We share this fundamental human desire to find our place in the universe, to connect with something sacred.
It's a very powerful and humbling thought, isn't it?
It is.
We've explored the kumbh mela from so many angles. Its mythological origins, its astrological significance, its historical evolution, the logistical realities, and even the potential downsides.
It's been a true deep dive, uncovering all those layers of complexity and nuance that make this tradition so fascinating and enduring.
Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into the kumbh mela.
We have.
From the myths and the astrology to the historical debates and the logistical realities of hosting such a massive gathering.
It's been quite a journey.
And even the potential downsides, But we've also seen how the kumbh mela inspires this sense of awe and wonder, this connection to something bigger than ourselves.
It's true. It really taps into that deep human desire for meaning.
It does, and it makes me wonder, knowing all that we know now,
Yeah.
what do you think the future holds for the kumbh mela? How can this ancient tradition navigate the realities of a rapidly changing world?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
But, the kumbh mela has already demonstrated incredible resilience. Over centuries, it's adapted to wars, famines, political shifts, and now the challenges of, everything.
A globalized world, technology, climate change.
Exactly. And evolving social norms, it's a lot.
It makes you wonder how it can maintain its essence while addressing these very contemporary concerns.
I think the key lies in finding that balance between preserving tradition and embracing innovation,
Okay.
honoring the ancient rituals and beliefs, while also recognizing the need for sustainable practices, effective crowd management, social equity, all of that.
It's like this dance between the old and the new, finding that harmony between tradition and progress.
Precisely. And I believe the kumbh mela could actually be a model for how we approach this tension between the past and the future.
In what way?
Well, it can demonstrate how faith and technology can actually work together,
Okay.
how ancient wisdom can inform modern solutions,
Right.
and how we can create a more sustainable, inclusive future while still honoring our cultural heritage.
That's an inspiring thought, that an event rooted in ancient traditions could help pave the way for a better future.
It is, and I truly believe the kumbh mela, with all its complexities and, yes, contradictions, could become a beacon of hope.
A beacon of hope.
Yeah, showing us that it is possible to bridge the gap between the past and the future, to find unity amidst all the diversity, and to create something truly extraordinary from our shared humanity.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
It's been an incredible journey exploring the kumbh mela with you. Thanks for lending your expertise to this deep dive.
It was my pleasure. Always love delving into these rich topics.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration.
We hope this deep dive gave you a new understanding and appreciation for the kumbh mela.
Its history, its significance, its challenges, and its enduring power.
And maybe, just maybe, it sparked a desire to learn even more.
Or even experience this incredible event for yourself someday.
You never know.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking out those experiences that remind us of the beauty and complexity and, yes, the interconnectedness of our world.
Well said.
Thanks for listening.